Once again, in round 10 of the 2016 British Chess Championships, we were treated to a number of really exciting games on the top boards. Really, the play this year has been thrilling, and all the players should be congratulated on their efforts to produce what has been a tightly contested championship, and a championship which really displays English chess at its best. My game of the day for round 10 is the astonishing clash between Nicholas Pert, playing white, Grandmaster, and David Howell, playing black. And for this tournament, Pert seems to have completely overhauled his opening repertoire. Normally we see him playing d4, knight f3, very solid play. In this tournament, he's become much more unpredictable. Perhaps that's a conscious move on his part, because you know, as you know, it's all too easy to prepare these days using computers. So here we see Pert playing the very uncommon move in his practice, e4, and Howell just settling for what he normally does, playing e5. And now comes a very old-fashioned variation where white plays bishop c4, black plays the two knights defence, and now this move d4. Back to the future in many ways. Well, black should take this pawn, and now white has to choose. If he castles, this invites the Max Langer attack. Clearly he could play c3 and go into a Scotch gambit, but he decides to play e5, which is, funnily enough, known as the modern variation. But there's nothing too modern about it. This stuff was being played 100 years ago. So black has to make a choice now. He can go knight g4, he can go knight e4. Howell sticks with the tried and trusted move d5. White plays bishop b5, black puts his knight in on a good square, and knight takes d4. Well, there was a game earlier on in the tournament between Sarah Longson and Mark Hebden, where black won handily by putting his bishop on c5. Howell sticks with the older move, bishop d7. Now the main point of this system for white is to first of all double black's pawns, and then to castle, hoping to make something of the slight looseness of the black pawn formation. But Howell tries to prove that this pawn formation is dynamic, and he moves forward with c5, which is one of several moves here. Black can play bishop c5 or bishop e7. c5 sticks an immediate attack on the knight, and now Pert has to make a choice. We're going to see how good his preparation is. Knight to e2. Well, by comparison with the other move, knight to b3, knight e2 is less common. Knight b3 leads to a quite interesting position, and it certainly deters black from playing as he does in the game with bishop c6. I think after knight b3 that move is a mistake, because first of all white hits the knight on g5 and then plays knight to a5, and this move is pretty awkward for black. He's got to play bishop b5, and then white can go c4, and that's the main point of the line with knight to b3, to try and get this move in to mess up the black position. And as you can see here, black can't take this pawn because he loses a piece. Queen takes d8 and then bishop takes g5. Going back to knight b3, therefore a better move is probably c6. Then we get this thematic move f3. Black puts his knight on g5. And there are a couple of interesting lines here. First of all, white can try to strike with the move c4. And probably black has to take it here. Then white puts his knight back on d2. Black can play bishop f5. And we get some interesting complications after knight takes c4. It's worth pointing out here that black can't win material by playing bishop d3 because of the move queen a4. And if he takes the rook, he gets wiped out after queen takes c6 check. King e7, bishop takes g5 check. Going back once more, excuse me, if c6, f3, knight g5, white could also consider f4. This is the main trump of the whole line for white, this central and kingside pawn majority coming down on black's head, hoping to start a kingside attack. But here merely an interesting position arises after knight e4, whereupon white's probably got to get rid of the knight with either knight c3, something like this, or more solidly knight 1 d2. Well, Pert rejects that line and settles for knight e2, which on the face of it looks more solid, but as we'll see, is a move which leads to tremendous complications. So f4, knight comes in, and now knight b c3. And with this move, Pert's arguing that if you take on c3, I can take back with the knight, avoiding all damage to the pawn structure. But of course, black can reinforce the knight by playing f5. White takes it, black takes back with the f-pawn, and now here we go, f5. Queen to e7, attacking the pawn, bishop f4, defending the pawn, and now very sharp play, black castles on the queen side. Queen d2, and Howell plays d4. And I wonder whether both players knew they were following the only game I could find in this line between Nakamura on Onishchuk, which dates from 2007. In that game, Nakamura played Queen a5, which differs from the way Pert plays in this game, and black came forward with c4. As white got the worst position in this game very quickly, we could say that Pert tries to improve on Nakamura's play. Seems okay for white after queen takes c4, but black's idea is queen c5. Takes, Nakamura put his king in the corner, rook h e8, rook a d1, and after e3, knight g3, bishop a6, black was getting on top. Black went on to win that game in 75 moves. Going back to our featured game, Pert tries to improve by grabbing a very hot exchange indeed by playing bishop g5. This allows black to centralise all his pieces. White whips off the rook, and now a very good move, bishop d6. Threatening queen takes h2 check and the bishop on d8. I mean, I suppose white had probably thought that after king takes d8, queen f4, he was saving himself. But even this is good for black. I mean, one can see why Howell doesn't do it. He doesn't want the king on d8. He'd much rather his king safer on c8. But this is playable for black, and probably still better for him. But bishop d6, going back to the game, is a very good move. And now Pert tries to get the queens off with queen to f4. The difficulty that white has in this position, taming the black bishop pair and the massive centre, can be seen in the line after knight g3. I mean, I just don't think white can defend the position normally by keeping the queens on. Black takes on d8, white goes queen e2, and now this move e3, completely throttling the entire white position. And there doesn't seem to be any good way for white to break up the black pawn centre. I mean, the pawn centre is absolutely killing here. If white tries to break it up, let's say with the help of the move b4, black can play rook h8, threatening h5, h4. A slow motion play, but what can white do about it? And if white goes b4, well, there are many moves. I think I'll just take it, actually. We can take this pawn and go bishop b5. And once again, white's getting into a terrible mess. If he grabs another hot offer of material, again, he gets downed by the central pawns. So Nick Pert plays queen f4. That was his idea. Howell just takes on d8. And he's not worried about a queen exchange in this position. I mean, if white exchanges the queens, black just improves his position. White's situation is so loose that he can't really contemplate defending this if he moves his rook to the centre, bishop b5. Black is well on top. So rook a d1 was played, bishop b5. Nick's got to take the queens off now and play rook fe1, but now the pawns are coming raining down on his head with c4. And the reserve, c5, is always on the cards. Now the computers suggest that maybe e3 was a better move here, straight away. And if b3, something similar to the game h5. Black just plays the position very slowly, running white out of moves. If white goes h3, then rook f8. We can come in and whip off that pawn. And if b4, a rather desperate move trying to break things up, then I think we can just take off the knight and take on b4. I don't see anything wrong with this. And then after c5, you know, it's not difficult to see how this game is going to proceed. White will lose to a simple plan of bringing the king up and pushing the pawns. But c4 was played nevertheless. I mean, one can see why he does it, very tempting. White plays c3, and now, as indicated, up come the reserves. c5, by far the best move. Yes, black can play d3 but then knight g3, and white has got excellent holding chances now that black's rather foolishly put all the pawns on the same colour squares as his bishop. And after bishop c6, king f2, well, I think white is well in the game here. It's a new game, and the pawns have been blockaded. But of course, Howell's not going to do that. He's going to play c5 as he did, knight g3, and now the simple move, bishop takes g3, followed by e3. And once again, we reach a position where white is very hard pressed to stop those pawns. Black's plan is simply to continue improving his position by moving his king into a better situation, something like this. Well, white's getting desperate. I mean, if he tries g4, king c7, the plan continues. He tried b3, and now another excellent move by David Howell, h5. Very good. Just recognising that white doesn't have too many useful moves at his disposal. I suppose black could have taken on b3 and played h5. But there, white could perhaps get his rook into the game, something like this. Why should black ever allow white to get so active? So he goes h5, very good. White plays rook c1. Another excellent constricting move, a5. Pert takes on d4. And now reluctantly sees that after b takes c4, bishop a4 is just crushing, planning the advance of the d pawn. So Pert plays a4, trying something. He takes on c4, king to c7. The pawns are so strong that black can just play slowly. And after king f1, the bishop came to c8, another very good move. And now we see the value of h5, because it allows black to round up that pawn on f5, which in this instance is going to finish white off. So bishop takes f5, king e2, and now the clearest way by black is the move played by Howell, d3 check, king takes e3, d2, and that is touchdown. Black is going to win a piece, and with it, the game. So Nick Pert resigned. Well, that's the type of entertainment that was on show in round 10. I mean, what a tremendous game of chess in terms of spectator-friendly stuff. You know, that's the sort of thing that spectators want to see. And the two grandmasters must be given full credit for producing an excellent and thrilling game of chess.